Hi, I'm Kelly. I hope you read the quote up here. I have a lot of horrifying stories of my own that span decades. And I was deeply hurt too, but I learned to forgive quickly, and that's not really what this talk is about. One of my male coworkers wanted me to be sure to preface this presentation by saying that I am not bashing men in this presentation. That's not my intent. My intent is to raise awareness. I work with a lot of great guys, so. According to Wikipedia, a hacker is a skilled computer expert that uses their technical knowledge to overcome a problem. Women pioneered the computer field, the computer science field, but they did so with zero technical knowledge, which is the modern definition, because the systems that they worked on never existed before. So if women were the pioneers, what happened? Why the disrespect now? And why is it a male-dominated field? So I'm going to give you a brief history of the computer pioneers, why, when, and how things changed toward women, the perceptions, and what you can do about it. Ada Lovelace was a first computer programmer. She built an algorithm for Charles Babbage's machine. And of course, there's Grace Hopper. She wrote the first compiler, and she created the COBOL programming language. And concerning programming, she is quoted as saying, "It's just like planning dinner. You have to plan ahead and schedule everything so it's easy and ready when you need it. Programming requires patience, the ability to handle detail. Women are naturals at computer programming." From World War II until the 1960s, women made up most of the computing workforce. From the documentary The Computers, the remarkable story of the ENIAC programs, it says, in 1946, 6 brilliant young women, pictured here, were the first all-electronic, they programmed the first all-electronic programmable computer called the ENIAC. It was a project run by the US Army in Philadelphia as part of a secret World War II project. They learned to program without programming languages or tools because they didn't exist. They only had logical diagrams to use. By the time they were finished, the ENIAC computer ran a differential calculus equation for ballistic trajectory in seconds. That's unbelievable for back then. Yet when the ENIAC was unveiled to the press and the public in 1946, the women were never introduced, and they remained invisible to the public. One of the ladies, Jean Bartik, she was quoted as saying, "We had no books or anything to teach us how to program it." And another lady, Marilyn Meltzer, she said, "We were sure that this machine could do anything we wanted it to. We were cocky like that." Dorothy Vaughn, you might recognize her from the movie Hidden Figures. She worked for NACA, which was the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics and the precursor to NASA. She was a human computer. The women who worked for NASA as mathematicians, their title was computer. That was their job title. Dorothy realized that the new digital computer, this is the 77000 series of IBM that they had bought, and Dorothy realized that they were going to be replacing her and her female counterparts' positions, and she knew it was important to learn Fortran, which she did on her own, and then she taught the women that were the mathematicians also. So she became a Fortran expert on this system. And she was the first female and black supervisor, African-American supervisor for NACA. Big accomplishment. And the ACD group was known to be racially and gender integrated on the frontier of electronic computing. There are so many more women pioneers, like Kathleen Booth. She wrote the first assembly language in 1947. Kathleen Spark Jones, who in 1953 introduced the concept of inverse document frequency, which underlies many of our web browsers today, search engines. Betty Holbert wrote the first mainframe sort merge on the UNIVAC in 1968. So if you do a Google search on UNIVAC operators, you will get something similar to this. And as you can see, if you look at these pictures, there are both men and women, but the overwhelming majority are women. And these are actual pictures of people doing their jobs, not advertising. In the mid-'80s, I worked on Sperry UNIVAC 1160 and Honeywell DPS-8 mainframes. If you want more information, come talk to me afterwards. It was a fun job. I loved it. This is an article from Cosmo Magazine from 1967. Notice the term computer girls, not women. And also notice that secretary, teacher, and nurse were not considered professions back then. By the late 60s, women were losing a foothold in the field. They only represented 1/8 of the people doing data processing, as you can tell from the numbers. Marie Hicks, in her book titled Program Inequality, said, in the 1940s, computer operation and programming was viewed as women's work. But by the 60s, as computing gained prominence and influence, men displaced the thousands of women who had been the pioneers in a feminized field of endeavor. And the field acquired a distinctly masculine image. So what caused this shift? Why were men taking over? So this is a graph from 1970. The green represents women. And you can clearly see here that by this time, the women were relegated to the easier job of keypunch operators. If you're not familiar with what a keypunch operator is, they're the ones who, the input for computers used to be cards. I punched many of them, and they would have holes on them. And the holes got there by the keypunch operators. They would type it in, and it would do its thing. And then those would be read into the mainframe computers. I'm showing my age, sorry. So I propose that women were forced out of the field by targeted advertising that began in the 1960s. So let's take a look. Do you belong in the Computer Science Corporation? If so, take this test. And I direct your attention to options A and C. Notice the irony of C. So this was not only targeting men, but it was also debasing females. Here we have 3 ads that actually use the word men on it, specifically geared toward men. This is an Army advertisement for, obviously, to get men to work on their computer. But as you'll notice, if you zoom out and uncrop that image, there are just as many women there too. And the irony of this, that is geared toward men, that's the ENIAC computer. And this is Popular Science from 1965. So the red here is computer science degrees earned by women. Now, one thing you have to realize is a little bit deceiving because a chart only goes up to 50%, not 100%. So in 1970, there were only 13.6% degrees that were held by women. So most of the jobs that were previously held by men and women in the computer field did not require computer science degrees because, you know, they were learning it. So as they went on these new machines. Despite the targeted ads toward men, as you can see, women still pursued computer science degrees, and they realized the need to be educated. It rose up until 1984. It rose up to 37%, but again realized that 63% were held by the men. And we've been in a steady decline ever since then. In 1994, I got my degree in computer science. And in 2014, at the end of this chart, it is down to about 18%. So I went to the School of Mines and Technology in Rapid City, my alma mater, and I took a picture of their computer science board of all their students. And it pretty much matches the numbers from 2014. There are 91 students and 18 women represented. So now let's take a look at how society defined men and women's relationships with computers in the 70s and 80s. These are some ads from that time period. Look at those guys. Don't they look smart? They've got their documents and their briefcases. They just look really good. Now let's take a look at ads representing women with computers from the same time frame. This one on the right actually talks about swinging. And this one down here says, if only she could cook as well as Honeywell could compute. What messages do these ads send? But it gets worse. I consider this hostile advertising. What do they tell us? They say women are emotional, they're time wasters, and they are the deadlier of the two genders. Pretty bad. You think that's bad, it gets worse. So our optical reader can do anything your Keypunch operator can do. Well, almost. How did this affect the attitude toward women in IT during this time? If these types of ads were acceptable, what kind of treatment in the workplace towards women was acceptable? I want you to imagine for a moment, if you're not the only lady in the audience, that you are a woman. A female mainframe operator in the mid-70s, and your boss comes in with a magazine that has this ad, and he shows it off to everybody, thinking it's so funny. How happy would you be to come to work? From personal experience, I can tell you that this ad on the end is actually a little ironic because usually the roles were reversed. This is just a screenshot of a Google capture of Apple ads from the same time frame. Notice the majority of the advertising includes men or some representation of the men's physique, like their hands, or the advertising on TV also had male narrators. So there are only 3 women here that are represented. So let's shift to entertainment and the movies. You guys probably, well, some of you might remember these movies. We've got The Revenge of the Nerds, Superman 3, The Matrix, and all our favorites, The War Game. You see that all the nerds and computer geeks are guys. But there were also movies that had robots, and most of them were men. So let's take a look at them. Don't they look good? They can conquer the world. They look so smart. Awesome. Now let's see, wait a minute, there were female robots too. We have Metropolis in the upper left. She would drive men wild with lust. And some of you might recognize Sicko, who just served Polly's every need. And also, of course, we got the Jetsons with little lowly Rosie, the maid. And we have Vanessa and the Fembots. I have a simple question for you. Do these women look as smart as the male robots? I should see these female robots. So in the 1980s, PCs became widely available for home use. And they were used primarily for gaming. And just looking at this, can you tell who the games were targeted toward, the advertising? It's mostly boys. How are the women portrayed? Certainly not as gamers. Anyone remember the first handheld gaming console put out by Nintendo? Game Boy. So the first PCs were bought by families for their boys. By the time those boys got to college, they were very familiar with how to use a computer. But when there were women in those same classes, which I was one of them, we didn't know how to use a computer. So we not only had to learn what was being taught in the class, we had to learn how to use this gadget too. So how about today? Are things any better? That first quote is from a Rapid City TEDx speaker this year who was in Rapid City. 2017 is when the second quote, occurred from a male software engineer in Google. And I want to read to you just a little bit more of what he said, if I can see this. He said, on average, women are more interested in people than things, more emphatic, more neurotic, and less assertive. This is 2 years ago, okay? Hiring practices aimed to increase diversity can effectively lower the bar at Google. That's his quote. A female African-American employee at Google said, when the subject of diversifying Google's workforce comes up in big meetings and internet forums, you pretty much need to wait about 10 seconds before someone jumps in and says we're lowering the bar. Between 2015 and 2017, Google added 20,000 full-time employees, technical employees. 80% were men. Yeah. Okay. So did anybody here attend the ICPC conference? It was in Rapid City a few years ago. Anybody? I was there. It was awesome. If you ever get to go to an ICPC, it's Intercollegiate Programming Contest. It's a worldwide contest, and it's just something to behold. It's really cool to attend. So I sent an email off, and I asked them for the numbers. I wanted to know, of course, how many men and how many women contestants there were. Their response to me was, and I quote, "We do not provide that kind of data. I hope you can understand there's a myriad of issues with this." But I have a video of all the contestants walking into the auditorium, so I counted them on my video. There were 9 women and roughly 385 men. So that comes out to about 1 in every 43 men. At our conference, we have much better numbers here. We have 1 woman for every 13 guys. And I am an ITO for the Weather Service, Information Technology Officer, and we have 122 offices across the United States. There's only 1 ITO at each office, and we are represented by 1 in 15 being women. So can these numbers still be attributed to the media? Maybe. This is Radia Perlman. You might know her. She's known as the mother of the internet. She holds over 80 patents concerning the internet. Now let me introduce you to one of the fathers of the internet. His name is Vint Cerf. I couldn't find any pictures of him holding a baby. The entire topic of my presentation was mushroomed out of advertising in my favorite magazine. Any ideas? My favorite magazine? What are your favorite magazines? Yell them out. Computing magazines. Oh, come on. How about this one? Wired? Do you guys like that one? It's my favorite. So when you look at these covers, there's 79 covers and only 8 or 9 have women on them. I also have one of their more well-known magazines here that's about the Microsoft CEO that took over from Bill. And I counted in the pages to find the first ad that had an intelligent-looking woman on it, and it was 35 pages in. But my boss, when I gave this talk, he's like, look what's on the opposite page. It's Downey. So, yeah. So I went to the BAM bookstore because I thought, okay, is this just a Wired magazine thing, or is it for all tech magazines? And in fact, when I went there, 0 magazines, tech magazines, had females on the covers. Well, all except for 1. How funny. So today, start paying attention to the computer ads on TV today, and you'll notice that most of them are men or narrated by men or have male hands in them. Not very many women. But the good news today is there's no hostile advertising, at least none that I've found so far. I want to pick on John Strand for a moment. I was hoping he'd be here, but so I've started attending his webinars, and I saw a similar pattern in his pictures. Look at these guys. They look all cool and smart. I mean, who doesn't like Michael Jackson? And we got this computing guy down here thinking really hard, really smart. So what is the only picture he had of a female in his presentation? Shari Lewis and Lamb Chop. Do you see the silent message that this sends, especially for the women attending, that women are childish and men are really, there he is, really cool and smart. Do I have to redo that? He was hiding. All right, so what can you do? First of all, you can realize that women can not only do the job, but we provide a different perspective. It's a known fact that men and women think differently, something to do with waffles and spaghetti and Venus and Mars. Women provide a unique perspective to coding. GitHub looked at 3 million of their users. Who do you think had the highest code acceptance rate? They were women disguised as men. As a society, we need to shift our thinking about professional IT women. And by the way, if you're not from around here and you may not recognize who this is Deadwood's own Calamity Jane. Business owners, what can you do? Use smart-looking women in your advertising and presentations. Men, you can help out too. Encourage and respect the women that you know in the field. And women, get your name out there. I know that sometimes we as women can struggle with what is called the Imposter Syndrome. It's very common, actually, in that we doubt our own accomplishments and have a fear of being exposed as a fraud. I'm telling you right now, don't believe that lie. And guys, don't let the women that you work with or who work for you believe that lie either. You are smart, and you have a voice that needs to be heard. There were only 2 female guest writers in the magazines that I looked at BAM. We could use a lot more of those. We need more women to step up and do this. Be confident in what you know. Write articles, give speeches, not to promote yourself, but to encourage the next generation. What else can you do? You can teach your girls how to code, girls in your life how to code. Girls who are in middle school have a higher rate of pursuing a computer science degree, and I am living proof of that. I took my first QBasic class in middle school, and I knew that's what I wanted to do when I grew up. So I'm thankful I get to do that. Here I'm showing girls how to use JavaScript to make Hello Kitty. And I've been educating young girls in the computer science field for over 16 years. It's not about me or for me. I'm at the top of the ladder where I work, and I am years away from retirement. Woohoo! I do it for the next generation, and for girls like my granddaughter. She's 12 years old, and she totally rocked out Hello Kitty. Have your girls attend computer science camps. I don't know if you've ever, is anybody from here, from Rapid City? Okay, a few of you, good. The School of Mines in Rapid City has a camp, and this is open to any girl in 8th through 11th grade. It's free. It's a Gen Cyber camp. They had, this year, I found out about it and I helped them out. They had teachers for the girls from Google and Microsoft. It was great exposure for them. I organized an afternoon whodunit mystery. It was a lot of fun. I got the whole office involved and everybody was so excited about it. It gave the girls hands-on contact with IT security, web coding, and Linux scripting. They had to figure out who hacked our NOAA weather satellite. The day ended with a hacker paying for her crime. I hope you guys can hear this. Well, you can see it at least. I'm making a lot of noise. And the funny, I'll narrate here, the girls are clapping wildly. Woo, making a lot of noise. They're all happy, look. It was great. So this guy played the NOAA director. So I was hollering at him, telling him, I didn't do this. Yeah, it was great. And then I tried to get some tears going. It didn't work very well. Oh, he's reading my Miranda rights, by the way. So as I was walking out, yeah, they all cheered and were so happy. I was kind of disappointed. I thought they'd be sad, but they weren't. So he puts on the glasses and he does a CSI thing and he said, where she's going, she's in for a lot of bad weather. It was a lot of fun. The girls had a great time. Finally, be a speaker at STEM events for women, for girls. This is the Women in Science Conference. I co-founded the Women in Science Conference in 2017 in Rapid City with Nancy Anderson-Smith, and this was our first committee that put on the conference. 12 years ago, we had 200 girls from the region who attended. This year, in 2019, they had over 900. And the Women in Science Conference is now a part of the Rapid City School District curriculum that's mandatory for 7th grade girls, which is awesome. So together, we can bring back the hacking pioneers. Thank you. Do you have any questions? Or if you do, or if you have any interest in the Women in Science Conference, maybe getting one started in your area. They're not that hard to do. Oh, and I should have told you a little bit more about it. So not only do we have all those girls, we also have guest speakers, female guest speakers that are in the STEM professions, including computer science, that come in, and the girls rotate around to the different speakers, and so they get exposed to the different career fields that they can do. But as of now, all the Women in Science conferences that I've ever spoken at, I've been the only IT person there. So we need you, so come. Anyway, thanks.